bright and early. Good morning to you. Welcome to The Breakfast Show, The Morning Brief. I'm Kayode Kikilo, and we're live for you in Lagos.
Yes, indeed. It's the morning after a night of relentless showers. But we take, of course, the character of the rain. Not the flooding part, but the determined part. Good morning and welcome to The Breakfast Show. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, as Bukola said, it's a wet Wednesday, as I'd like to call it. And I hope that you're ready in case it rains again later in the day. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, everyone watching us around the world. I'm Anne Nwawadu.
So let's give you some steam this wet Wednesday. I don't know if it is cold where you are, and I do hope that everyone slept well, because it looked like a lot of people had a very busy day yesterday, particularly those who attended the national wedding or even the continental wedding, both online and on social media. I think 99% attended on social media, while maybe less than 1% attended in person. The small chops were served on social media for a lot of people. The images, the dancing was on social media, but it just speaks to how a lot of people love Davido and Chioma. So it's finally happened. Chivido. That's what they call it.
Well, I mean, it got to a time I had to shut down social media because it was overwhelming. You just be watching. Every time you open Instagram, it is Chivido. Every time I'm like, oh my God, okay. And it was as if people said, a lot of people were, it was like a ticket. Oh, were you invited to Chivido?
Right.
I really? I said, okay. But anyway, I mean, we wish them well.
Yes, indeed. Well, every 3 hours or so when I visited, all of the major blogs were reporting. So I also basked in the euphoria of the colors and the traditional wedding display of the Chivido union. So congratulations to the celebrity couple, the latest celebrity couple in town.
Did you get small chops though, Bukola?
Well, I didn't need small chops.
You didn't need
because I was an online wedding participant.
So Kayode, how did you get the small chops you would think?
A lot of people were getting small chops, social media small chops, the bits and pieces. But it's quite interesting, guys, because when you look closely at that ceremony, first Davido and Chioma, it's a marriage across cultures, across ethnicities, and then see the people who attended. You realize across ages, political party affiliations, religious beliefs, and the rest. And a lot of people just said, this is basically what I mean, look at the beauty there. So that's
a display of culture.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the dancing governor, right?
Osho State and uncle to
he was like the chief logistics officer there. He was literally everywhere. You could tell that he's really excited for his nephew in this case. There you see. Just a beauty, honestly. We all love weddings, except you're paying for it though. But most people love weddings.
That's because of all the color, the people coming together. Sometimes it's like a reunion of some sorts for a lot of families. So, okay, that was a beautiful day.
I guess the big congratulations go to Chef Chioma, really, because as Kayode said, it's been a long time coming, and amid so many challenges for the couple.
Yes,
perhaps there's no need for us to revisit that.
You see that place you're headed.
Don't break that table.
I bid you farewell.
Shaking.
If you want to come for anybody, come for this. But it's just all beauty and all love. I mean, seeing people attending that particular event. And as I said, these are some of the things we love to see, because it reminds us of our humanity, of why we need to invest more in love and not hatred or war. So on behalf of all of us here, we say happy congratulations, happy married life, rather, to Davido and Chioma and to all of the attendees.
And beyond the wedding, really, Kayode, beyond the fanfare and the grandeur, we really do wish the couple a happy, lasting union, bliss for a lifetime. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's important to say that.
So while we bask in all of that beauty, culture, celebration, and the rest, there's a whole package for you on the show this morning. So let's bring you up to speed, as they say, with what's happening, not just in Nigeria, but the major events across the globe. But we start here in Nigeria, and there's a big question lingering. Does the federal government have a coordinated plan to combat the rising cholera epidemic in the country? Big question, but guess what? We'll be finding out from the Minister of Health himself, now that the federal government has set up a committee to address the outbreak. And we ask, how far have we gone in actually improving our health infrastructure? It's something we've been at for a long time. So stay with us right here. The Minister of Health will be answering those questions.
And we really do hope that we'll be asking those questions, agitating your mind. But that's not all. The need for improved food security continues to stare Nigerians in the face with the rising cost of food caused by low yields from the farms. And in other cases, farmers not being able to go to their farms. There's also the unresolved debate of ranching versus open grazing. So we ask, where lies the solution?
I also will be talking about the deadly protest in Kenya. So we'll be heading out to Kenya. The 5th day of national protest in Kenya over the new tax laws turned bloody as several protesters were killed while trying to break into parliament. Well, President William Ruto had vowed full response to the destruction, and he even called Kenyan Defense Forces, scenes reminiscent of Nigeria's NSAS protest, if we recall that event that happened back in 2020. Well, we'll find out what is actually going on.
So there you have it. Plus, as always, we're tracking your reactions across social media and on WhatsApp as well. I know top on that list, naturally, your guess is as good as mine, Chivido. But there are other things happening. So keep your comments and your reactions coming in. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief. And of course, that's the WhatsApp number with which you can get through to us this morning. Let's know what's going on around you, about the rain, whatever it is. Send it in. You are the fourth anchor on this show. So let us help you amplify your voices, shall we? So that is what to do. You can also do it on YouTube, by the way. If you're watching live on YouTube, drop those comments. We're here for you. So, guys, are you ready? Well, your top stories on the brief this hour. Nigerian workers and indeed labor unions may have to wait some more to know what the federal government's new minimum wage will be. Well, this is because the Federal Executive Council has stepped down consideration and deliberations on the memo of the new national minimum wage to allow President Tinubu more time for consultations before presenting it to the National Assembly. The Minister of Information disclosed this while briefing State House correspondents on the decisions taken at the council meeting.
There was a memo to discuss that at the Federal Executive Council meeting. I want to inform Nigerians here that the Federal Executive Council deliberated on that, and the decision is that because the new national minimum wage is not just that of the federal government, it is an issue that involves the federal government, the state governments, local governments, and the organized private sector, and of course, including the organized labor. That memo was stepped down to enable Mr. President to consult further, especially with the state governors and the organized private sector, before he makes a presentation to the National Assembly.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, says Nigeria's finances are being overhauled with a positive balance despite outstanding debts. He was speaking after the week's Federal Executive Council meeting, which took place at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. The minister said the federal government does not rely on ways and means in order to fund itself and is also reducing its debt burden.
The total debt stock of Nigeria in US dollar terms fell by 15%. That is very positive. We are focused on ensuring that the revenue that is due to the federal government is collected robustly using technology, avoiding the blockages which manual processing can cause. And it has led to very robust revenue effort. We do not rely on ways and means to pay salaries. We don't rely on it to pay debt service, external debt servicing, or other obligations. That is the situation. The finances of Nigeria have been revamped. The glass is half full.
From the executive to the legislature, where a public hearing of the House of Representatives Committee on Public Accounts took a sad turn when a deputy controller of the Nigerian Customs, Mr. Etopesian, slumped and died while responding to questions from the members of the committee. A statement from the House spokesman, Akin Rotimi, says the officer suddenly developed health complications and was rushed to the National Assembly Clinic, where he eventually died. The committee has resolved to suspend hearings for a week in his honor. Meanwhile, President Tinubu has condoled with the Nigerian Customs Service over the passing of Deputy Controller Essien. While extending his heartfelt condolences to the family of Deputy Controller Essien, he described his passing while on an official assignment as most distressing. Also to politics in Rivers State, police authorities in the state have declared a former Niger Delta militant leader, Gabriel General Asabuja, wanted. The Rivers State Commissioner for Police, Mr. Tudi Disu, said this when he appeared on Channels Television's program Politics Today. Asabuja was seen in a viral video making some strong comments amid local government council crisis. Meanwhile, the Commissioner of Police had earlier assured residents of the state that the Nigerian police will continue to maintain law and order while addressing a solidarity march by members of the National Youth Council of Nigeria.
My duty as a policeman is to protect lives and properties. And I give you my word that we are going to continue to protect lives and properties. We are not politicians. We will do our best not to join their politics. I thank you so much for all you have done, for the support you have given us. I assure you that we'll continue to do our jobs of maintaining law and order. Thank you. Rivers State is a very, very important state to the economy of our great nation, Nigeria, and there must not be breakdown of law and order. I thank you so much for all you have done. I thank you for coming to see us today. I've taken note of everything you have said. We will continue to maintain law and order. And whenever we do any mistake, do not hesitate to tell us so that we can correct any mistake we have done.
To politics now, members of the Nigeria Labour Congress National Transition Committee went en masse to the headquarters of the Labour Party in Abuja, demanding the immediate resignation of the National Chairman of Labour Party, Mr. Julius Saburi. The acting chairman of the Transition Committee, Mr. Abdulwahid Omar, who led the members of the Labour Union to the Secretariat, was seen chanting solidarity songs and calling for the resignation of Mr. Aburi on the grounds that his tenure as a chairman of the party has expired. However, the protesters were dispersed by policemen as the unions attempted to breach the gate of the Secretariat.
The tenure of Abure has expired by the 10th of this month, and there's no way we will allow vacuum. And the stakeholders unanimously decided to set up a National Transition Committee whose duty is only to conduct elections, congresses from the ward level to local government level to state levels, and it will culminate into a national convention that will be free, fair, and transparent.
The 2023 presidential candidate of the party, Mr. Peter Obi, was at the Secretariat to meet with the National Working Committee of the party, and he meets with the NLC officials. Here's what he said.
They should discuss them again. These people who are outside are members of the family who we must reconcile with. We must all sit down at the table and decide the future of our family. And that's what we are doing.
And to security now, armed bandits on Tuesday attacked a mosque in Tazame community under Bungadu local government area of Zamfara state. The spokesperson of the state police, Commander ASP Yazid Abubakar, while confirming the attack, said 2 persons were killed, while yet to be ascertained a number of others were kidnapped. He said the command has deployed reinforcements to the area to restore normalcy. A resident of the area who pleaded anonymity for security reasons told Channels Television that the bandits stormed the community when they were preparing for early morning prayers. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has ordered a final forfeiture to the federal government, the sum of $1.4 million linked to former Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Mr. Godwin Emefiele. Justice Ayokunle Faji made the order after hearing an application filed and argued by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to grant the final forfeiture order of the money said to be domiciled in an account number in Titan Trust Limited to the Nigerian government. The order is coming a few days after another judge of the same court, Justice Chukwujeku Aneke, ordered the final forfeiture of over 12 billion naira money and properties linked to Mr. Emefiele. From a former governor of the CBN to a current governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, who says the volatility in the foreign exchange market has calmed down and liquidity has returned to the market. During an interview with Bloomberg in London, while sharing key insights on the current state of the market, he added that the Apex Bank is determined to tame inflation through conventional methods. Mr. Cardoso noted that deceleration in the month-on-month inflation rates highlights a positive development. He also assured that the Monetary Policy Committee members remained vigilant in monitoring inflation trends and ensuring a moderation of inflation numbers. And now to sports. Euros 2024 is still on. There's been lots of action. England moved into the competition's last 16 at the top of Group C, but it was only achieved after another underwhelming display with a draw against Slovenia in Cologne. Well, Denmark's 0-0 draw with Serbia means they finished second and Slovenia qualify as one of the best third-place teams. Elsewhere, a masked Kylian Mbappe scored his first ever Euros goal, but France were held to a draw by an already eliminated Poland to finish second in Group D. And Ralf Rangnick's Austria produced a fantastic display to beat the Netherlands 3-2 and top the group, while the Dutch took third place, also qualified by being placed third best. Now, those are the top stories at this hour. But what are you saying, and what are the other things that you need to know about? Well, let's get into the trending conversations. And of course, Anne joins me to walk through all of those major talking points. Anne?
Yes, indeed. And yesterday, was it Monday, when we're talking about what has happened to the minimum wage? No one is talking about it, and we expected, okay, maybe this week something would definitely happen. But anyway, before we get to that, I guess we'll get to Kenya.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been days of protests in Kenya. And yesterday, at least 5 protesters were shot dead by the police in Kenya. And the section of parliament actually went up in flames as demonstrations against new tax proposals escalated. So an angry crowd breaking through police lines to storm parliament in the capital, Nairobi, before setting parts of it ablaze. In an address just late last night, President William Ruto said that all means will be deployed to thwart any attempts by those he described as dangerous criminals to undermine the security and stability of Kenya. He's also deployed the military to quell the protests. So what are you saying, really? We'll get you more information about what's playing out in Kenya, absolutely. But let's get into the realm of social media. And, well, take a look at what's being talked about.
The first one is, of course, about the minimum wage, FEC stepping down the minimum wage memo for consultations. And let's hear from your Sure Plug. It says that this is of great importance as workers' purchasing power has been greatly impacted negatively. Well, they need to speed up the process or open the borders for food items to come in at cheaper rates.
It's quite interesting how what's playing out across countries are quite linked. But take a look at what I am Who I am 1759 says, and X says, what was the essence then of the tripartite committee? Stepping down in this language implies what exactly? That's another question. This is long overdue, the Caesar says, and politics is still overshadowing it.
You know, we talked about how politics is always infused in so many other things, but Viva says that the uproar has subsided, so they can step it down for now.
Just a moment, and it looks like we'll be heading to Kenya very soon, just to give you updates about what's playing out in Kenya. You just seen Teresia Gita, who's a journalist live in Nairobi, Kenya. So we'll be giving you, well, bit by bit, account of what exactly is playing out in Kenya. I haven't seen that violent protest yesterday, and a lot of people are saying, is this reminiscent of the NSAS protest we saw in Nigeria?
I mean, it looks almost something similar too, because they faced what a lot of people also faced during the NSAS protest of 2020. They have claimed they have witnessed killings. They have already, I mean, they've recorded deaths already at that event, sad event. But we'll head to Kenya, as you said, and find out more details about that event.
So let's speak with Teresia Gita. She's a journalist in Kenya, joins us live on the program this morning. Well, good morning, Teresia. Welcome to the Morning Brief. I mean, we're watching here from Nigeria, and we're definitely concerned, we're worried, seeing that young people have been killed as a result of these demonstrations. But just a little background for those who are wondering, is this another NSAS protest that played out in Nigeria? What exactly is this about in Kenya? Tess, what exactly is playing out?
So just to give a brief, I don't want to equate it to SARS that happened in Nigeria. But what I would like to put across is it's the anti-tax protest, and the protest is against the Finance Bill 2024. And the Finance Bill here in Kenya, what happened, it's a framework that dictates how the government is going to collect and also spend money. So the biggest challenge, as we see with the Financial Bill 2024, is that with the youth who are behind all these protests, they're feeling that there's a disconnect when you're being told there is high taxation that is needed while the government officials are living lavishly and also brandishing the money, yet there are few opportunities here in the country.
So speak to us about what this finance bill is about. I understand that young people are now translating it in different languages so people can understand. So what exactly is the grouse? Is it taxing something that people say should not be taxed? Yes, there's the accountability part and transparency where people say, well, we need to see government also living up to the billing. But what are the details of that finance bill that has irked a lot of young people in Kenya?
Okay. So looking at the finance bill, it's a bill that dictates for the financial year that is supposed to start in July of 2024 to 2025. And looking at some of the details of it is, with this, there is going to be an increase in taxation, especially the digital tax. We see during the last financial year, there was a 15% increase with the digital content creators. So there's going to be an additional increase. We're looking at a reintroduction of value-added tax in the sanitary towels and also the diapers, with which looking at the online community saying that, is it a crime for a woman to have their menstrual cycle? Is it going to be possible for women also to also bear children? Because as the diapers increases, people tend now to start thinking, what about our future? We are looking at also the land rights. When we come to Kenya, when it comes to matters of inheritance, people inherit land and we pay a little bit of tax each and every year. But when it comes to now listing, it brings a bit of an issue because it's something that they're wondering, why are we being excessively taxed on such kind of matters? And when you look at in the finance bill, you find that also there's going to be some money that is not being explained what is going to be happening, like around $800 million, 800 million shillings that is confidential. So what is this confidential that you're talking about? There's going to be money that is going to the spouses of the first lady and also spouses of the second lady. And the question is it absolutely necessary to have some of this. And now the goal is to collect $2.7 billion for this financial year. And people are wondering, are we going to have it? Is it even possible to have it? Looking at the debt, which is now at 68% of the GDP, and the World Bank requires, or rather recommends, that it be at most at 55%.
Well, Teresa, I mean, the first response to things like this will be people saying, no, we do not want this, which has resulted to these days of protest. Today will be the biggest day of that protest. Do you think that your message, what you are trying to put out, is being heard by members of government?
From what we have seen, yes, it's being heard, but you find that with the presidential address that was made yesterday night, the feeling that has been there throughout the night has been, the hashtag that we are going to meet on Thursday. So that means Tupatane Thursday. And that is bringing this situation of, uncertainty, because, with the Gen Zs and the young people in the country, they're actually trying to make fun of it. And it's not only something that has been happening in Nairobi, it's something that has been happening throughout the country, and finding that the members of parliament who voted yes, some of their properties, some of their offices, the county assemblies have been brought down by fire. So yes, they have had us. And as you can see, the president has said he's going to put measures, yet with the measures that he's trying to put in place, and especially calling on the military, it has been said, and I quote, the Constitution of Kenya, Section 241, Clause 3, that says that he actually needs the county assembly to approve the deployment of the Kenya Defence Force, which has not been done yet. So his deployment of the military is deemed unconstitutional.
Quite a lot, really, because we saw lootings yesterday, members of parliament affected, businesses linked to them, their offices were also torched. We saw people looting. It's a lot of chaos, but as you said, the president has called in the defense forces. Whether or not that is constitutional is another thing entirely, but some say, what options does he have anyway? Because he's calling or describing some of these people as criminals. Former president, whom he worked under, has also released a statement where he asked him to, or his government, to talk to the people, not at the people. So speak to us about the sense today, this morning. Is there some sort of calm? Do you see the defense forces on the streets? Because we understand that there might be protests today and the biggest one tomorrow. So what is the current state this morning? And then the death toll, what are the figures that we have?
So as we look at the death toll right now, currently, we are speaking about over 10 people dead. The Kenyatta National Hospital, which is the level 5 hospital here in Kenya, reported as per yesterday night that they had taken in at least 40 injured people. As to the situation today, yes, today it's a day where the youth are planning to go to the police headquarters, that is the Department of Criminal Investigation, at least to request for the other youths who have been abducted mysteriously. And also, as we see yesterday night, the head of judiciary, Madam Kome, actually came out and said that it is unconstitutional for people to be abducted without their lawyers and also without being taken to court. So the feel on the ground is, as part of the Kenyan citizens will be marching to the DCI headquarters to ask to have more youth to be released, those who have been abducted, but also they're going to go to the judiciary to try and stop this unconstitutional move by the president, so that at least people will be able to march tomorrow peacefully, because the demonstrations have been peaceful and there has been a chance that we are peaceful. That has come across. But of course, throughout the protest, we find that there are people who are goons who are trying to loot. And yes, there were damages that have occurred throughout the CBD, that is in Nairobi.
Right. I mean, we all know Nairobi to be a beautiful city, and we do hope that that stays the same. But young people, I see there's a lot of excitement. They're trying to take the destiny of the nation, just by the horn and say, this is something we did. But we wish you the very best, and we ask that you please stay safe. We'll get back to you soon enough for more updates. We've been speaking with Teresia Gito. She's a journalist in Nairobi, Kenya, joining us live for an update on the situation there.
All right, so let's come back to Nigeria, and we head straight to the court. We know the issue with linked to Emefiele, and now the court orders final forfeiture of the sum of $1.4 million linked to him. Well, Collins Opera is saying that it is infuriating to see the continuous looting of public funds by those entrusted with power. Emefiele's case is yet another glaring example of the deep-rooted corruption that is plaguing our institutions. We need accountability and stringent measures to prevent such disgraceful acts from recurring.
So it's still an ongoing case at the court, but let's take you to Sokoto. There's been a lot of chatter around the Sultan of Sokoto, whether or not there are plans to dethrone him. I think a lot of people are they're looking at what's happening in Kano, but the state government has come out to say there are no plans whatsoever to dethrone the Sultan. And take a look at what this user has to say in response to that. That's Ebon Akikumi saying the governor has already deposed 15, and maybe the vice president is seeing his handwriting on the wall against the Sultan and therefore gave him early warning as a stated time to say saves 9, but the government has come to say, nah, that is not the case. So I don't know where this is coming from, but there you have it.
All right, and we head over to the bars and social media, which I guess will continue for the next 1 week. I don't know how true that will be, but it's about the wedding. They called it the national wedding yesterday.
Well, I mean, look at the national attention. You can only call it that, really.
All right, that is something to cheer about, right? And this is from Crystal Wears. It says, Davido is genuinely happy. His excitement is all over the videos I have watched today, and that is contagious. May God hold this union.
This Olatunde user, Olatunde_RTD.
He said I just did laugh.
It's like happiness won't finish OBO. So you have to understand the context of this. So when he says he's been laughing like Momo, it doesn't mean he's a fool, because that's what Momo can mean. It just means he's laughing sheepishly. There's just a lot of
because
happiness.
OBO posted, Davido posted something yesterday and said Nigeria is happy. So I guess a lot of people say, overjoyed.
We're taking a dose of that happiness. And OBO is a nickname for Davido, right? Which is Omo Baba Olowo, which is something he had used in his music. But then this ends with a blessing. God bless your new home. And then you see the couple. I mean, look at that. If you're a child, you may need to cover your eyes at this point. There you go.
All right.
Well, there you go. Okay. That is it with the trends. But we're starting off. Yes, we've gotten a dose of happiness, but there needs to be that reality shock. There's a cholera epidemic currently. It's an outbreak, and it's causing a lot of concern, particularly when you realize that we're not even at the peak just yet. There's July and there's August coming. So what is the federal government doing? There's been a committee set up. The Minister of Health joins us in a few seconds right here on the Morning Brief. So stay with us right here as we speak with Professor Ali Pate in a moment. It's the Morning Brief.
Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. And for good reason, in the past 2 weeks or thereabout, we've been staying with the cholera outbreak in Nigeria. And with 1,523 cases or thereabout and 53 deaths, the cholera outbreak is indeed taking on the nature of a public health emergency, the second public health emergency, and for which in the manifesto of the current government there was a promise for a coordinated action plan to tackle any public health emergency. And so suffice it to say that this would be a good test for that. But is there a coordinated response for the cholera outbreak to tackle it? Let's have that conversation as we have joining us the Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Honorable Ali Pate. Professor Ali Pate. Professor Pate, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed. So before we begin to look at a declaration of an emergency by the NCDC, Let's take a step back, and look at perhaps from 2022. I've been looking at the NCDC's monthly report about two, and in November 2022, there was at least 1,393 cases, and in November 2023, there were about 3,000 plus cases reported from different states of the Federation. So the question would be, having these reports, how much of this cholera outbreak caught us napping in terms of preparation, considering the fact that the WHO has declared this disease a poverty disease?
Thank you. I think let's step back before we get to the numbers. That we are constantly being challenged by infectious disease outbreaks in Nigeria. And that's why this administration had a four-plank agenda in terms of improving governance to work between federal government, states, to improve health services so that population health gets better, and to unlock the value chain so that we can produce much of what we need. In addition, to focus on health security in a coordinated way so that we can detect disease outbreaks and respond to them effectively. We did that with diphtheria, as you recall, late last year, and early this year when meningitis struck, we were able to decisively come around it with the pentavalent meningitis vaccine and stop it. Now, the cholera outbreak that we are facing in this instance is part of a global phenomenon. As you know, we're in the 7th cholera pandemic, and this year alone, WHO reports more than 200,000 cases of cholera in 5 regions of the world, including Nigeria. Earlier this year in Southern Africa, lots of cases, but we are now beginning to see the uptick in Nigeria. Once that started in Lagos, in Ogun, through the Center for Disease Control, NCDC, the technical working group was activated, which comprises multi-sectoral content experts, states, but also our development partners, technical agencies, to mobilize so that we can support those states to reduce the transmission and treat those who are affected. At the end of the day, cholera is a public health crisis, but it's also a disease that comes in the context of contamination of food, of water, of poor sanitation, of developmental challenges, and deficit in infrastructure. So we have to think about that as well. And open defecation is prevalent in many parts of our country. That is fueling this effort. So in responding to that, the Emergency Operations Center, which was activated by the NCDC this week, for instance, is to really get ahead of this outbreak so that we number it. And the government also appointed a cabinet committee to mobilize across sectors: water, environment, agriculture, youth, health, and others, to really come together and work with state governments so that we can decisively stop this outbreak before it consumes a lot of our populations. But in the wider context, the health security of Nigeria requires us to be very sensitive and to have good surveillance systems, which at this moment, they are strong. That's why we are able to pick these infectious disease outbreaks and be able to mobilize the resources to respond to that. But we have to be vigilant continuously. Otherwise, we could be surprised by infectious diseases.
Well, Honorable Minister, even though it's a global public health emergency, it's just important to point out that within the 2 years of Nigeria reporting, the infrastructure deficit ought to have been covered significantly to reduce the number of cases. Now, concerning the activated center by the NCDC for the tackling of the cholera emergency, will there be funding released by the federal government to manage this response?
Yes, I think we had anticipated the seasonal outbreaks, and several months ago, the president, in his wisdom, approved pre-positioning of contingency financing to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, so that we are ready with the resources, and that's what has been used so far. And this committee that has been formed, I believe that we would have additional resources mobilized, in addition to the technical and financing partners who are also joining in, because infectious diseases do not respect borders, and therefore it's a collective effort. The states, I think, also have an important role to play to release their own funding to the state health facilities to deal with the cases in their respective domains.
But Minister, you talked to State House correspondents yesterday while you said that the President has already approved the creation of the committee to tackle this issue. But we see that the concentration of most of these deaths and cases happening is in the southwestern region. Is there any plan by this committee to concentrate on some of these areas that need help mostly?
It's a national emergency. 31 states are affected. 107 local government areas are affected. And that's just where we are today in terms of the outbreak. It could get a lot more numbers, but we hope that it would be numbed by the efforts that we are putting in place. Now, there is focus already on Lagos, and I have to call out the Lagos state government for really being on top of it right early on, and with the support of NCDC and this technical working group that existed at NCDC, they are able to minimize the impact of this. Similarly, Ogun State. So the Emergency Operations Center uses data to figure out where are the cases and to be able to mobilize resources so that we can contain the issue where it exists. We cannot spread ourselves all over equally across the country, but at the same time, if we don't get those other states ready, we could intervene when they are much more advanced, and that would be unfortunate. So that's the idea of this national effort. Now, bringing the state governments is also important. Some states have done a lot of work on open defecation. Jigawa State is one of the states, in fact, it's a state that was declared open defecation free in Nigeria. And so there are lessons to be learned, because we have to deal with open defecation as a problem. A quarter of our population still practices open defecation. Of course, there are differences across the states and between urban and rural areas, but we need to mobilize collectively as a people, public sector, private sector, to really address this and to encourage the behaviors of our people so that feces do not come into contact with water that people drink or the food that they also consume.
I would also talk about open defecation. Of course, this is the rainy season already, Minister, and we know that there are so many flood-prone areas, for example, Ogun State and even Lagos State. How well is the federal government working with state governments to ensure that potable water at least are provided, especially in rural areas where sometimes government policies are not implemented? Some of those people are even forgotten. People come to them, they make claims that they're going to do something, especially during campaigns, and immediately they get into power, they forget these people. So what is the federal government doing to ensure they work with these states and even local government areas and local government chairmen to make sure that some of their priority projects will be providing water for these people?
Well, in the context of our federal system, there are some responsibilities that are primarily of the local governments. Waste management, hygiene and sanitation aspects of it depends on local governments and depends on states. And many states have environmental protection agencies, and I believe that those agencies have to function in addition to what the local governments would do. From the federal government level, because we look at the entirety of the national health system, I think we have to ensure that we deploy resources, and my colleagues in the Ministry of Water Resources, for instance, are working to expand availability of potable water, as well as things like mobile sanitation facilities, like mobile toilets. But those are not by themselves sufficient without the contribution of the states and local governments.
I'd like us to look at the federal government's strategy. A lot of people might want to borrow from the ongoing football competition and how you look at the strategy of a coach, and you can almost tell if this team will do well or not. You look at the attack line, you look at the defense, the midfield, and the overall strategy. Now that there's been this interministerial committee to combat cholera, what exactly is the strategy? Who is doing, will I say, the heavy lifting? Who is doing what? How will there be coordination such that we'll come up with goals? Let me not say goal. We'll come up with goals, and we'll make sure that cholera is something that hopefully will not disturb us as much anymore.
There are various parts of government that intersect with this issue. On the preventive side, Environmental Ministry has a very important role working with the states. And I mentioned the Water Ministry, which has an important role in terms of potable water supply and also sanitation, which is housed there as well. Food security and agriculture in terms of food safety, in addition to what we do in the health sector, which is on the prevention, the regulation of foods, but also on the treatment of those who are affected with oral rehydration solutions, with training of the health workers, with laboratory testing, with the public health responders, the epidemiological tracking, the data. The Youth Ministry, for instance, has an important role in terms of mobilizing society to deal with this issue of open defecation. I think there's a lot of scope to mobilize all actors, not only public sector actors, not only federal government actors, but civil society and the private sector, so that as Nigerians, we say we can reduce the rates of open defecation. And there are good examples of how this has been done. India, for instance, was able to construct 110 million toilets within 5 years, which provided toilet facilities for more than 600 million people. So Nigeria, with our population, if we commit, not only the federal government under the leadership of the president, but also the state governments and also private sector and our development partners, we can be able to address this so that in the years ahead we see less and less of this issue. And it's not only cholera, by the way. There are other infectious diseases like typhoid fever, for instance, that are also affected. Tuberculosis, that is also a disease that sometimes is associated with housing challenges. So as we improve the physical infrastructure, the urbanization and the utilities that are backing that up, we should begin to see healthier population. And we need to do that in a multi-sectoral, whole of government and whole of society way. That's the spirit of the health sector renewal investment initiative that the president launched, as you recall, last year.
We'll eventually expand the conversation to talk about the general state of the health sector, which is also at the heart of this. But I'd like you to maybe provide insight into this thorny issue. The WHO has described cholera as a disease of poverty. Now, if you check maybe literature, you see that poverty was first discovered in the 70s in Nigeria, came back in the 90s, and we've been seeing, the regular visitations. Now it's become yearly, literally. We saw how we handled COVID, how we approached COVID when COVID reared its head in 2020. Everybody came together, and we found a way to ensure that COVID at least was not as lethal, or is no more as lethal as it used to be, but not the case with cholera. And there have been questions as to, is this because it's a disease of poverty? That's why a lot of attention is not being paid to it as it ought to, or at least as we saw COVID get that attention. Is that what you perceive on your side as well, Honorable Minister?
There are many diseases that are socially determined. There are diseases that are diseases of largely excluded populations who are vulnerable and poor, who live in inadequate housing with low sanitation, who don't have enough food, and so they are malnourished, or whose occupations exposes them to certain disease conditions. And so to address population health, there's the aspect of the biomedical, which for certain diseases we handle, but there are some that go beyond that, that are multi-sectoral in terms of the determinants of why those diseases occur and how to respond to them. At the end of the day, we need to grow our economy. We need to translate that growth into incomes for households. We need to also build the infrastructure, the base for the urbanization that we're seeing, so that people will have good housing, good nutrition, safe spaces, proper mental health, in addition to access to health facilities that they can afford to get quality health services. So health is one thing that is, it's not just a biomedical issue. There is health in almost all public policy arenas, whether it's on transportation, whether it's in housing, whether it's in agriculture, environment, or whether it's in youth, or even the gender dimensions of it, to ensure that women are not left behind. And there are vulnerabilities that perhaps will have to be addressed through social protection mechanisms to ensure there are safety nets for those who are left behind. It's a whole of government and whole of society effort that is necessary to improve the health and well-being of any population. And that is what the president is trying to do as part of his renewed hope agenda, so that we grow our economy, we invest in the infrastructure, we have a stable macroeconomy, but we also have this focus on the human being, on their health, their education, and their well-being, and we don't leave anyone behind. That's the direction of travel, and we're executing that. And the interministerial committee that he formed yesterday is one manifestation of that, as a team within his administration, and also partnering with the states as well as local governments and other partners, so that we move ahead collectively.
So, Honorable Minister, I'd like us to step back a bit again, from this side, from my own end, and look at the response of the immediate past administration to managing the public health emergency that we had in 2020 and 2021. And you recall that at that time, there were funds raised both from the private sector and the public sector for the management of COVID-19. And there were conditions and guidelines given for the disbursement of those funds, one of which was appropriation before the funds would be released. I wonder what you have in your handover notes, Honorable Minister, from the immediate past minister, on how well those funds were utilized. And giving a breakdown, sometime in 2021, the past Minister of State for Health said of the 500 billion naira stimuli funds that was released, 126 billion naira was released to build a resilient health system. Now, from what we have now, can you say that there is justification for the disbursement of a whopping 126 billion naira to build a resilient health system in the country?
Well, COVID-19 was an unprecedented global pandemic. It's a 1 in 100-year crisis that the world faced. And the global GDP collapsed by more than 5% in 2020. Many governments, including Nigeria, responded with various instruments in their hands. And Nigeria's government at that time responded equally with huge infusion of resources, not only for health, but also across the social domains, to ensure that the impact of the pandemic is numbed. In terms of our health system, the efforts that we're building on right now to improve the quality of the primary healthcare system, to strengthen the Center for Disease Control, the laboratory capacity, the testing capacity, that the human resources, the field epidemiologists, are all building on some of what had started during COVID. But we need to go beyond that. We also need to produce some of what we use in terms of containing such outbreaks, whether they are masks, whether they are protective equipment, whether they are basic things like drugs that we need to manufacture, and in the long run, even vaccines against the infectious disease threats, or at least the capability to be able to produce those vaccines. So it's a continuum, it's an evolution. We experienced something that is unprecedented, and even the wealthier countries struggled. I cannot vouch for exactly the specifics of what you referred to, but I know that the government at that time tried to respond to an unprecedented challenge and did its best. And this administration is building on that to take Nigeria to the next level.
But, Honorable Minister, if those funds were indeed judiciously spent on all of these areas of public health infrastructure that you talked about, why would this administration be needing to release another 25 billion naira to the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency for the rehabilitation of primary healthcare institutions currently?
Well, you have to understand that as a country, we have not really invested enough in the health infrastructure and equipment for decades. We spend very low amounts of money per capita on health. So while what you quoted may appear large in quantum, but we're a country of 228 million people. So per capita spending on health is still relatively low. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu increased the domestic resources this year, and we hope that as we implement, we'll mobilize more and double down on that. So the issue is, within what we spend, how do we prioritize it to respond to the needs of the Nigerian population and to ensure we build the resilience when we're challenged with outbreaks? Many of the successes that we report, in a way, are in diseases that don't get out of hand, the counterfactual that we cannot prove. For instance, when we had the meningitis pentavalent, the meningitis outbreak early this year, which affected, unfortunately, less than 2,000 population in a few states, we mobilized and deployed vaccines. And that outbreak did not escape to go into tens of thousands of Nigerians. That is the counterfactual, what could have happened. But because we were able to respond, it didn't happen, and it doesn't make into the news. Diphtheria was a major issue late last year. We vaccinated in 14 states, outbreak responses, huge efforts, and we've stopped that. It doesn't make it into the news, but that is a disease, a badness that was prevented. And so that is not as visible. And the few cases, for instance, on the cholera, we have 1,528 cases. That's still too much relative to the 200,000 that is in the world today. I think in this year, I think Nigeria is just beginning. We hope that it doesn't go beyond that, but it could have been a lot more without the efforts that have been made in the past, but also without the efforts that are currently underway to ensure that the trajectory of the outbreak is minimized so that it doesn't make a lot of damage to our population. We have to remain vigilant, and health is not cheap. Quality healthcare is not cheap. We need to invest in it, and that's what the president is doing, and that's what we are committed to, and we keep asking that state governments also join us in investing in health so that we can ensure the health and well-being of all Nigerians.
I'm glad you talked about the investments in the health sector by the president and, of course, the federal government. So now we're talking about accountability. How is the federal government dealing with making sure that MDAs and public organizations who are supposed to handle these funds and get results are checked? We're talking about accountability. How is the federal government ensuring that at least when money is pumped into something, results are gotten, not just results, but positive ones that are going to make a difference?
Yes. So I'll give you an example, a specific example. The Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, which channels resources to 8,800 primary healthcare centers. These centers are at state level and in the realm of the local government, but they are managed through a ministerial oversight committee. When we came in, we assessed, we audited, we looked at the Auditor General's report, we saw the deficits in many states, we engaged the Economic Council, the state governors, we engaged the commissioners, and they had action plans to respond to the weaknesses in their fiduciary systems. And when we disbursed for the first quarter of 2024, we did it in public, and we called EFCC, ICPC to keep an eye, and we provided a hotline, an email, so that Nigerians in the front ends report if there are adverse or diversions of those funds. That is so that everyone is kept honest in terms of the use of those public resources for health. At the end of the day, the resources have to reach the population. And if there's collusion in the front end, if a health worker manning a primary healthcare center takes some of the money and gives it to the senior level official, that is something that it's Nigerians that will have to report that. So we made that publicly available, and as we move forward, we're going to have the quarterly reports that we had signed in a compact with the state governors, the strategic compact that was signed on December 12, 2023, during the unveiling of the Health Sector Renewal Investment Initiative by the President, so that we are constantly tracking and trying to improve in terms of the accountability measures and the answerability for all actors in terms of the resources that they're using. But Nigerians themselves have a role to play. To track those resources in the domains, in the local governments, in the primary healthcare centers. And if there's a diversion, to basically alert the relevant authorities to investigate allegations and be able to deal with them. Dealing with these issues are a continuous effort. It requires strengthening our institutions, which we are doing in government, but it also requires behavioral change from Nigerians to realize that we all lose if we allow few individuals to divert what is meant for providing basic health services in primary healthcare centers. That's just one example of what this administration is trying to do to sanitize the health system.
All right, thank you for that example, Minister. But let's come to you saying that Nigerians must also hold these institutions accountable. For example, primary healthcare centers, you mentioned how Nigerians must also say if there's a deficit or there's a problem or mismanagement. Some of these primary healthcare centers do not have the basics. For example, the fluid, the drip, which is meant to at least treat this cholera outbreak. Some of these primary health care centers do not have it. Some of these states are not even offering free medical treatment for cholera. What would you say about that?
I think this is a question that each state government, because you said, should be able to respond, because health is a responsibility of the federal government. It's also a responsibility of states and local governments. What I've shared with you is what the federal government is doing, its investments, including the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, the resources that we've been able to mobilize. And we expect that states will also complement the federal government and do what the president is doing in terms of investing more in health and ensuring the human resources are there, the commodities are there. From our side, the federal government makes a contribution. All the states of the federation received some medical commodities from the federal government in response to this cholera outbreak. But at the end of the day, it's all of us joining hands that will make this work.
You made a very vital point, and I think these are the truths we actually need to talk to ourselves about. How quality healthcare is actually expensive. Really, it's money. You pay money to get this service at any level. So can Nigeria really afford and pay for the quality health care that the people deserve and demand, such that you find government officials, even the president, seeking their health needs here in Nigeria, all of them? I was looking at the budget for the U.S., for example. In 2022, the U.S. spent about plus $1 trillion on healthcare, $1.5 trillion. In that same 2022, Nigeria spent 800 and something billion naira. At least we topped it up in 2023. We spent plus 1 trillion naira. But that is in nowhere near what the US spent for the quality healthcare that even the people say could be better. So really, if we must afford, if we should and will afford that quality healthcare that we deserve and demand, can we afford it as a country, as a government, or what options are available to us?
Yes, so quality healthcare, as you alluded to, is not cheap. You have to invest in it. And if we take the $2 billion that is in outbound medical tourism and just return it to use it in Nigeria, that will more than double the federal government's health spend, for instance. That's just one example. But let's step back and say the proportion of our revenue, of our GDP, our economy, that we get in government revenue is among the lowest in the world. So if we pay the taxes and we reduce all the leakages, let's say, in terms of government revenue, government and the Ministry of Finance will have more resources. And of that increased resource that it has, it can allocate more of that to health, more of that to the states, and the states will be able to allocate more to the health sector. But it also needs to grow the economy. If our economy doubles, for instance, as the president envisions, then we'll have more resources coming to government from that growth of the economy. And we can prioritize health and education within that and allocate more of that. But if our economy is not doing well, for instance, as we've seen over the last several years, then the pool of resources available to the finance ministry is limited across multiple challenges that it has to contend, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's security, whether it's health, whether it's education. So bottom line, as a people, we have to commit to come together and see how we can ensure that our economy grows in an inclusive manner. And within that growth, that we have revenue that is due to government comes to it. And within that, to prioritize investments in health. And if we do that, then we'll begin to see the quality infrastructure, right, the quality human resource, and the commodities. Having said that, even within the existing resources, and the president increased the resources this year for health, for instance, we made some very significant moves in terms of infrastructure for cancer care, for cancer equipment in 6 geopolitical zones through our partnership with the NSIA. We are revamping many of the teaching hospitals. Right. We are expanding the primary healthcare centers, retraining 120,000 frontline health workers, and also building the infrastructure for us to produce some of what we need, so that within the resources that we are spending, we don't have to buy things that are manufactured elsewhere that we can produce here, which may be cheaper and more available because we just minimize the cost of even logistics. Those are the ways that we're trying to use the available resources, use it well. More health for the money that we have, even as we look for more money for the health that we need to achieve the quality health system that Nigerians deserve. And this is what the president is trying to do.
So obviously Nigerians, its organs, government need to do more work, or maybe be more creative in ensuring productivity. So while we're doing all of that work, we also must not overlook the major challenge of corruption that has bedeviled the sector for years now. Lack of transparency, accountability. Take health workers, for example. Most of them are gravitating to where they will get more pay, because for them, they have to offer their service for pay anyway, and they'll do it to the highest bidder in court because they have needs as well. So the corruption we've seen has also impacted. Yes, we've not been as productive as we ought to, but we've also not used the little we have judiciously. I remember, I think it was in January, that the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Representatives was saying that there are some ministries that need to return COVID-19 monies. I think for the Ministry of Health, it was 10 billion naira. And it ties back to the question Bukola asked about the handover note. Did you see some of these things in the handover note? What was said about it? Were the monies really spent? Were they not spent? How did you respond to that request by the Public Accounts Committee? And by extension, how would you respond to the health workers out there who were saying, we need more pay. This needs to come today. You had promised, but how soon is that coming? So it's a two-pronged question, Minister.
So specifically on the 10 billion naira that was allocated in 2021 during the COVID-19 response by the previous administration, this was money to be channeled towards production of COVID-19 vaccines through the BioVaccines Nigeria Limited, which is one of the companies that exist in Nigeria trying to manufacture vaccines. It was in the interest of domesticating the manufacturing capability. That money has been around and has not been used. When we came into office, we looked at it and we decided that the resources should be used for the intended purpose, but it should be through the right entity in government that holds government shares in the BioVaccines Nigeria Limited. So that money is intact in terms of being available for BioVaccines Nigeria Limited. But that's not enough for BioVaccines to start manufacturing vaccines with it. It has to mobilize additional resources from other areas. And in fact, just last week, we were invited to discuss with IFC, with the leadership of BioVaccines Nigeria Limited, how they can be helped so that Nigeria begins to be on that path to manufacture vaccines. Overall, the issues of corruption are systemic issues. They are across government, across sectors, across levels of government, and you might even say across countries, because even the wealthier countries also have their own issues of corruption. In our own context, what we said, the first pillar of our agenda is to improve governance. And that means getting federal government, state and local government working hand, having a compact that governs expectations between different levels, having structured governance and efficient governance systems, institutions, regulators that are functioning well, being transparent and being accountable with data. And that's why the sector-wide approach that we have actually has that. And I mentioned the disbursement of Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, the fact that we will have quarterly reports and on annual basis have the joint annual review and the state of health of Nigerians, and of course submit it to the National Assembly and also to the President so that we take stock as a people and continually improve. There are many audits that have been done. We deployed high-quality accounting firms to look at the institutional capacities of our agencies. We used KPMG, Ernst & Young over the last few months to understand the gaps, because institutions, when they are weak, you have to build them over time. And we believe that having those systems are key to improving the efficiency of utilization of resources and minimize diversions, and being open in terms of the resources that we channel, and calling on other relevant institutions to keep an eye on those resources that are being deployed through states, local government to the primary healthcare centers so that they are not diverted and be able to answer the questions. Regarding the second part of your question on the remuneration issue for the health workforce, I have to say that there are lots of health workers in Nigeria that are remaining in the country and doing very well in very difficult circumstances in the realm of local governments or as state employees, sometimes in insecure areas and many also in the federal government. And we appreciate them. There are a few that choose to go abroad for training. And in fact, we approved for some of them to go to other places to be trained. But we expect that when they train, they will come back home. We're expanding the training of those who are around and improving the working conditions. And in the context of the wage reviews that are ongoing in the country, of course, with the Salary, Incomes and Wages Commission, we have made those submissions to have some adjustment of the remuneration of the health workforce. At the end of the day, it's what the economy can afford. At the end of the day, you cannot give what you don't have. And so we have to be very deliberate not to promise things that are impossible to fulfill. Many of the legacy issues are 10 years. Promises that had been made could not be achieved. So it's pointless to keep making promises and setting yourself up when you cannot be able to fulfill them. But one thing for sure, this president is committed to the welfare of the Nigerian workforce, and in our case, in health sector, he is the champion for health human resources in the African Union, in fact, overall, and that says a lot about where his mind is in terms of the health workforce, and he's recognized by that. And our medical and health workers, I think, understand that. That's why they're bearing with us, and we're in constant dialogue with them. When issues arise, we try to resolve them, and we have enjoyed so far relative peace in the sector, which we intend to continue to strive to maintain over time. But it's not something that we can resolve just in a week's time, because it's taken sometimes more than 10 years in the making.
So, Professor Pate, we will hope that this has not been too much of a drill for you. We really came prepared, and in fact, we've not exhausted all of our questions, but we look forward to another opportunity to have you on the program. And we hope that all the investment in preventive and curative health, and indeed in the retraining of health workers that you've talked about, will yield results sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for your time and contribution on the program, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. We've been speaking with Honorable Minister of Health, Professor Ali Pate. And when we come back, we switch gears to another subject matter. Stay with the Morning Brief. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. This is still the Morning Brief right here, and now we will be talking about enhancing food security in Nigeria. But before we begin this, let's talk about some of the major figures that we have. I mean, according to some reports by the Food and Agricultural Organization, Nigeria actually has 70.8 million hectares of agricultural land area, planting various food products. And despite a significant investment in local food production, Nigeria's food imports has hit more than $6.9 billion. That's according to reports 2 years ago. But the question will now be, if Nigeria is producing so much, why are we still importing? Well, our guest today is Tunde Bajoko. He's a farmer and MD BO Farms. He's right here with us in our Lagos studio. And we also have in our Abuja studios the senator from APC in Benue State, Titus Tatenge Zam, and we'll be addressing farmer-herder clashes. We'll also be addressing food insecurity in Nigeria. Thank you for joining us on the program. My first question will be to you, farmer, Mr. Banjoko. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah.
What is the real issue at this moment? You are a farmer. It looks like that sector is most affected by some of these policies and some of the actual things when we talk about realities on ground at the moment. Give us a sense of how farmers are affected, especially when it comes to insecurity in the country?
Okay, thank you. And I think we are affected in a number of ways. So we'll just probably highlight one or two and see how much of it we can deal with. First, when we talk about the insecurity that we are facing as farmers, a lot of farms have been abandoned. As at 2012, 12 trillion worth of project has been abandoned in the agri space. This year alone, about 332 farmers have been killed between January and now. And that tells you what the farmers are facing. And another report says it's not even 332, it's 2,134, thereabout. And in the same period last year, we were talking of 128 people killed. And of course, we know it's not everything that's even been reported. So that tells you who hears such numbers and wants to go to farm. And then you hear that between November 2020 and November 2023 that we have the reporters at now, or in the Northwest alone, about 224 million has been paid as ransom by farmers. So it's not really an interesting time for farmers. And then I think I posted a picture of myself on the farm some months back with mobile security surrounding me and vigilantes surrounding me to tell you that that's why food is expensive at times, because you have to pay for your own security at some point, at some location. So those are some of the issues I think we are facing. The insecurity is real. Though it's fair in some areas, it's fair in some states, but in some areas it's really a threat. And the more farms are abandoned, the more we'll be facing what we are facing. So there needs to be confidence of people going to the farm. So we are not doing too well in that area. Even in the area of funding, I don't believe we are doing too well at the moment. We are still allocating 1% of our entire budget to food when people are doing 10% or more as a nation. So that is also not an area we are doing too well. And despite that mega allocation, you still look at the breakdown of some of those expenses, and you can see that it's not being well utilized. We have to do more of investment into direct production, like developed nations are doing. Well, what you want to first achieve is to have enough. When you have enough, then you start talking about, okay, what are the next phase? Though we have been confronted with some of those issues, we still have issues of our supply chain. We still have a lot of gaps. We still have our post-harvest losses doing over 3 trillion or so annually. That's still a major gap, telling us we can still do something with it. No, we are talking about we don't have enough. Part of what we even manage to produce are going to waste. Now we are talking about the lean season where everybody talk about tomato. Some are talking about using cucumber instead of tomato, but how long can you do that? And then we are talking about looking at the output we are having is even still very low. On most farms. You'll still be talking of maybe for maize 2 tons per hectare, 3 tons per hectare, and then when some nations are doing 10 tons, same for rice, same for cassava, we are still doing below global average. So I think our best practice is still not good enough.
Okay, let's go to Senator Titus Zam, who actually sponsored the bill on ranching. If you recall the anti-open grazing law, which was enacted by the former governor, Samuel Ortom. Let's talk about that anti-open grazing law. Some have said that you actually sponsored this bill because you are from that part of the country, in Benue State. How did the anti-open grazing law fare in terms of, did it do any good on the side of farmers and for herders?
Well, I'd like to say he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. And my case is that of someone who is personally affected by the incidents of farmers, herders, violent clashes in the last few years. I am a son of a renowned farmer. and I belong to a farming community in Benue State. And my people in the last few years have had the misfortune of being sacked from their villages, from their farmlands, and they are now living in IDP camps, and their own villages are taken over by the marauding herders. So I have it as a personal experience, and being an elected representative of my people, it is only natural that I should take the concern to the center where I feel something should be done to stem this tide of violent clashes between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders. My thinking is that, and I think most of Nigerians, is that when we stop this practice of carrying animals with arms and ammunition and ransacking villages and farmlands, and you rank those animals and keep them in one place, then you would have solved this problem of farmers' herders crisis. So the motivation behind this bill advocating for ranching is that my people, and indeed the whole of Benue State, which used to be the food basket of the nation as a result of the huge farming population there, have now lost their farmlands, and they are now living in IDP camps as displaced people. And so it is both a moral and political responsibility on my part to take this route of seeking that animals be ranched and kept in one place.
Right.
That is the reason behind this bill.
Well,
it's only a coincidence that I am from Benue State, where the former governor had also made a lot of publicity about ranching law. If I came from Borno or from Zamfara, and I see this menace of herders farmers crisis, I would still have been in the forefront of calling for a way out of this economic problem occasioned by the farmers herders crisis. My dear colleague who spoke from the Lagos studio already alluded to the fact that agricultural production has suffered a great deal due to the incidence of farmers herders crisis. And you know that this country thrives on subsistence farming. That's where bulk of the food is produced in this country. And when most of the farmlands are taken over by rampaging herders, you can only imagine the implication of that on the food security in this country. So this is the time for Nigeria to rise to the occasion of finding ways, adopting the best international practice in animal husbandry, which is ranching. Nobody carries animals across the length and breadth of the country and then create problems along the way, face all manner of hazards. This is old practice. You know, there is a maxim of old habits die hard, and I think that is the problem that is bedeviling our pastoralists in this country. But we must modernize. We must adopt new techniques in animal husbandry so that we can have peace and economic development will thrive in this country.
And I think we can talk about how well or otherwise this law performed in Benue State on one level, but then we understand that Benue State, it's not exactly like Nigeria as a whole, because there are more factors that come into play when you talk about the nation rather than just one state. So perhaps it might also help to look at how it played out in Benue State. But quickly, I want you to speak to this senator, if you can hear me. Naturally, when this conversation comes up, we'll come back to you, Senator Zam, but let me come to our guest in the studio. So we have a situation where security is causing food insecurity. Yeah. And now food insecurity is now causing a bigger challenge for us as a nation. So everything is just intertwined. And you talked about one issue at the heart of it, which is security for you going on farms. We were joking yesterday and saying it's raining. You know, people should see this as a season or as a reason to farm rather than that is as a reason for other things. But then we were cut short by the security situation yet again. So it's a real problem we have with us. For you as a farmer, something has been said quite a lot. That is there a conspiracy against food production in Nigeria? Is there like a concerted effort targeted at food production in Nigeria? If there is, what is the end game? How can we outsmart, if there is any conspiracy, outsmart that? Well, I mean, we're very resilient people, really. We don't have a reason to not have food. From the southwest to the north,
all across
central,
the country.
We have land.
So I think, I don't know if I'll go the route of conspiracy. I'd rather say maybe we still lack the political will to resolve the matter. Because, you know, you look at the budget to defense. I'm not sure in the last 2-3 years they are complaining about funding. Yes, no matter what you allocate, they'll still complain. Yes. So even though they got, I think, 1.6 trillion, 5.7% of our budget this year. But my concern is, you look at those who have manned those ministries of defense now, their hierarchies. Most times when they leave the office, they are always being tried for this mismanagement. So I think it's the economy of the insecurity that is prolonging the matter. That's my personal assumption, that because a lot of people are profiting from this system, like the senator mentioned, some people are the IDP camp is being maintained by somebody. People have been, you know, you have to supply food, supply water, supply basic health facility, requirement to them. So I think it's the economy and what people are benefiting from the insecurity that is prolonging the matter. I believe the day the president or those are our political leaders have that courage to end this, it will end.
Before I come to Senator Zam, I just want to ask you, because people have raised concerns about, okay, we say that the North is not able to send in as much tomatoes. It's so funny that tomatoes are the heart of it, but that's not the only thing that is expensive. But I think tomato is just a celebrity here. So if the North is not able to supply, maybe from Kano, for various reasons. People don't go to the farm, tomato, Ebola, and all of that. What happened to the Southwest? So what happened to the arable land? Is it that the Southwest also is not able to augment? Because we're looking at helping to balance it. Is it that the Southwest cannot grow tomato, cannot grow pepper in large quantity to be able to feed the Southwest and even support the North? Maybe even export. Is the Southwest handicapped?
No, we are not. But I think this is what we should look at. Each state has its own comparative advantage, where you have your strength, your soil is good. So before now, we were not doing so much in that area. But now we are doing, but the lands we have in the Southwest cannot be compared to what is in the North. That's the truth. They have massive lands cultivated for the same way. When you are traveling across the Southwest, what you'll be seeing is cassava, maize, oil palm, and all that. That's what you see in the North. That when you go to the North, you see them doing pepper, sesame seed, and all that. So they do that in volumes that can be enough. But what we are facing now is that what the Southwest is producing cannot be enough for the country at the moment. So what we have is just augmenting what is being supplied before now. So imagine where you are having 100 tons, let's just for sake of numbers, and now the Southwest is producing, let's say, 10-20 tons. So there'll still be shortage that ought to have come from a location. So that's, I'm not sure not that we are incapacitated fully, but we are not, the lands we have, and now we are just going into that space. And what we are doing in that space is even more of greenhouse. Not the open, and greenhouse is more expensive. So they can do theirs openly and do large hectares, but we do more of greenhouse in that space. Of course, people still do the open planting, but not as much as. Thank you.
Okay, so let's return to Senator Zam now in the hope that he can now hear us. I particularly want you to speak to the fate of that bill, at the National Assembly, particularly because at the time that it passed second reading at the Senate, it was not without, bickering by the senators, and we know how this anti-open grazing bill legislation across states of the Federation can be a source of division. And the resolution at that time was that it shouldn't be forced on states that do not practice open grazing. But, you know, that even contradicts what we see now with even the Southwest. We see, you know, cattle rearers, pushing their cattle on major roads. So what do you project to be the fate of this bill in case it encounters another opposition, perhaps at public hearing level or at the lower level? Would you specifically be proposing that the president signs an executive order on anti-open grazing law?
Well, no, I don't see the bill suffering any setback at the public hearing stage, because what the bill seeks to sort out is a problem that has bedeviled every part of this country, and that is the problem of violent clashes between sedentary farmers and the nomadic herders. Every patriotic Nigerian knows that the only way out of this crisis is that of having a law in place that will put pastoralists in one place as it is done in other climes and societies. So the resistance that you probably witnessed from a few number of my colleagues in the Senate was expected, because this is a practice. The open grazing practice has been with us for quite a long time. So shifting from it suddenly will naturally generate some ripples. But I know that a majority of Nigerians are waiting for the public hearing stage when they would come out en masse to support this bill. Know that this is not just about farmers, herders. It is about the unity of this country. When you have a particular practice that has created more problems than solution, then every right-thinking person would naturally support any effort geared towards sorting out such a problem. From north of this country to the south, we have had this problem of farmers' herders crisis. So it's just a matter of time. I do believe the majority of Nigerians will support this bill, and the president will eventually sign it into law. I want to tell you on authority that even those of my colleagues who rose against this bill, we are only concerned about certain segments of the bill. For example, the proviso that ranches be only established in pastoral state of origin didn't go down well with some senators. They felt that the freedom of movement of pastoralists may have been infringed upon if that proviso is allowed to stay. But as I always ask, the constitution that gives you the freedom to move from point A to the other does not allow you to kill people from point A to point B and take over their lands. The constitution that allows you to carry your animals from one location to the other does not permit you to walk into people's farms, destroy the crops, and kill them when they resist. So I think majority of Nigerians, and indeed even my colleagues, when they sit down to critically look at the benefits of this bill, they too will appreciate that the bill seeks to provide a situation where both parties, that is the farmers and the herders, will have some kind of harmonious relationship by way of exchanges. If you come to Benue, you've got the same
pardon me, if I may come in here, and you've already pointed out what may seem to be a challenge to the bill, where some were raising the concern that you cannot infringe on the freedom of movement of the herders. And to that, some would say that it's not a challenge of lack of laws that we have in Nigeria, where indeed we have a surfeit of laws. But the real challenge would be how to get away from the major highways and streets of Nigeria, nomadic cattle herders, into ranches, and to embrace a more sedentary lifestyle. So give us a sense of what is contained in the component of your legislation that would ensure that they're taken off of the streets and they're made to embrace a sedentary lifestyle.
Yes.
Senator Zam, I wonder if you heard me.
Proviso.
Okay,
Yes,
go ahead.
I heard you.
Go ahead then.
I heard you. There is also a proviso in the proposed bill that should elders want to ply their trade in any states of the Federation, they should seek the approval of the host communities in liaison with the authorities there, and then acquire land to establish ranches in order to keep their animals there. It is not that they are totally shut out, but I said the law is emphatic about ranching. So wherever you go, should you get the consent of your host communities to get the land and establish ranches, you are welcome. So nobody is discriminating or stopping anybody from keeping animals, but it should be done in consonance with the laws of the land. At the moment, there are no laws on pastoralism. And so that is even the reason why people have taken advantage of carrying their animals everywhere. You made the point that there are many laws in the country and the problem is enforcement. Yes, there is, but when an action is regulated, it is better for you and me to now be in a position to measure whether there's an infraction or there's no infraction. As things stand now, there's no basis to measure the behavior or the movement of pastoralists from one location of the country to the other. That is even the reason why someone is even making reference to freedom of movement. Freedom of movement does not allow you to go and destroy someone's crops. If the law is put in place regulating pastoralism as a whole, then one would be able to now say this is right and this is wrong. So my belief is that the country will benefit more when this ranching law is put in place. And so everybody will know their limits.
All right,
you are not stopped from carrying animals from Sokoto or Kano or Zamfara in a vehicle to go and sell them in Lagos or Benin or wherever. But you must not stray into people's farmlands along the way. That's what the bill seeks to achieve. So the freedom of movement is no longer trampled upon when you are free to move in a vehicular form, not by carrying animals through people's farms and plantations. That is what the bill is after.
So let's take focus a little away from security and see what we as individuals, institutions, and public offices are doing in terms of achieving food sufficiency in Nigeria. This is to you, Mr. Banjoko. We have over 14 agricultural institutions in this country, a lot of them built on thousands of hectares of land. Then you now begin to ask, what are these institutions doing in terms of even improving agriculture? Some have said that some of these institutions haven't even planted seeds that they can even sell in markets in the country. So what should be done? How can we take the bull by the horn to, even if other institutions are not doing, if security is affecting farmers, or how about institutions?
But we can't leave them in isolation because they operate within the society. So we must admit that. So it's not enough. Most of them, I was reviewing a paper yesterday with some colleagues, and then we realized some of them have as much as 8,000 hectares where they are sitting. And of course, we were, looking at what some of them are producing. Is just far from that number. So we'll ask ourselves, they are being funded by the Ministry of Agric. How much is going to this institution? Both the research, they're about, I think there should be almost 44 on that ministry. So you look at how much are they getting. Is it enough for them to do any sizable mechanized operation? Or just to do a bit of research that sits on their table? And they can't even do, and what they do most times, like some of us practitioners make jest of them, sorry to use that word, is that you do a research on a plot of land, and you tell me what you did on a plot of land I should go and do on 200 hectares. And the result is not always the same. So people also do not buy into some of those research, because you did it on a plot of land, and you're asking me to go and do it on 200 hectares. And most times, by the time you try it, it's not always the same result, because they did it in a controlled environment with the little funds they have. So I think we should speak to them as well. They can also start generating revenue Most of them are not thinking, finance or thinking business. So they are all thinking, my work is research, but they are not also looking at, can I also have a system that can sustain itself? But I think some investors are beginning to do that. I won't mention name, but I think some of them are beginning to look at what can we plant, what crops, what animals can we rear. So I think the advice should be most of them should stop looking for, this sharing from Abuja has done us more harm.
And that's my point exactly. There's a budget for agriculture. So must they wait until they begin to generate revenue? What is that funding deployed to?
Most of it goes to, overhead and personnel. Bulk of it, I can tell you. I think bulk of it goes to, but they can also start looking at what can we do with the little we have to add. They've not seen themselves as being in a place to contribute to the food chain. They've limited themselves to, our job is to provide new innovations. But now most of them should start thinking of how can we contribute to this. Like how they asked earlier on, we are completely relying on some part of the country and all that. So most of these issues now have to start coming together. Like if I'm to mention one of them in Ogun State, I think that might be even over 8,000 hectares. And now they are giving it to some factories to probably plant and all that. They are not using it, but leasing their land when they should probably get involved. So I think most of them now, but most of these guys that, I'm sorry to use the word guys, that manage these parastatals are not business minded. We need to now start probably getting business managers for them, look at how they can raise funds to see that if you also do this thing, you can make money. That will also even help the issue of the insecurity in one way or the other, because we have a lot of lands covered with bushes. I'm traveling now. When I leave your studio, you'll just be driving and all you'll be seeing is trees, and you're asking yourself,
and that would actually be farmland for crops.
Farmland for crops.
We're looking for.
I'm telling you, I'm going to pass through one now, one of those institutions now, and I'm telling you, the number is between two communities. And in those days, in the 80s, they give you as much of land as you want. So, but those lands have been left on you, so they can start thinking business like that's for the institutions. But for the maybe individuals or private sector, we should start thinking long-term financing for agri, because that has also been our issue. Nigerian investors, people call every day, what can I do with 2 million and get money every 3 months? They're always thinking of every 3 months, and that's why people are being swindled. Food is not something of 2 months, 3 months. Yes, there are crops that you can get in 45, but people should start thinking. I think we've been brainwashed with this quick money syndrome in Nigeria that you just want it now. And you are always looking for that avenue where you can put 1 million, and by the end of the year, you have 1.8 million. You are not thinking of, okay, if I put this 1 million, even if it's 100,000 they are giving me at the end of 12 months or 150,000, people are always in a hurry, and that's why we turn down a lot.
So let me just off the top of my head, I know at least 3 people that will be like, this man is talking to me, and they've been swindled, sadly.
20 million, 50 million, not even the 20,000, 100,000.
Lots of money. Let me come to Senator Zam. Hopefully I can get my question across to you, Senator. I know this is going to be a very, very divisive issue, and we've seen how it played out so far in the National Assembly, but it ought not to be if we have a common goal in mind. So maybe by way of, as we wind down, really, can we speak to what's in it, even for the herders themselves? Because I think that might be a game changer, because I think what they might see it as is, this is against us, forgetting that there's actually a lot in it for them as well. So does your bill capture that? I know the Senate President has said there should be like a major parley about this after its killed second reading, but what are the things, how does this benefit the herders themselves, so they know that this is also for them? Please go ahead, Senator.
Well, this bill is a win-win advocacy for both the pastoralists and the farmers. Let me start with the herders. When you keep your animals in a ranch, you have saved yourself the torture and the hazard of trekking from one corner of the country to the other. The animals are kept in one place. They are given proper health care. They are given proper feeds, and therefore the yield in terms of procreation is better. And then the ranch policy will also create job opportunities for other people involved in livestock business. For example, if you establish a ranch, maybe in Zamfara, not only will the herders be engaged there, other workers will be employed to take care of the ranches in terms of keeping the facilities in good condition. The animals are given better health care in a sedentary environment where veterinary doctors can attend to them. Therefore, there is a propensity for the animals to even produce more under less strenuous conditions that they are exposed to by way of open grazing. And then, what about those people that will come all the way from wherever to come and buy those animals in your own location? They will lodge in hotels, they will buy their food, buy your food. Therefore, the entire value chain from animal husbandry or livestock businesses will now be blossomed such that many people will now become part of the whole process. Then you are saved the problem of fighting along the way. You are also saved the hazard of losing your cow or animals from attacks. So it's the best thing that can happen to any professional engaged in livestock business. So I would seriously advocate that they key in. It is just a matter of awareness. Let me tell you, India is the world's greatest country in animal husbandry. Look at the population of India. They eat a lot of cow meat, and they are comfortable because these animals are kept in ranches. They are not involved in any clashes with any farmers anywhere. And so they are doing well. In Africa here, Ethiopia is one of the biggest producers of livestock. And they are doing well because the animals are ranched.
All right.
Why is it that Nigeria that does not even have many cows? Nigeria has about 20 million heads of cattle, you know, and then we're having all these problems.
Thank you very much.
The long-term effect in all of this is that the country is seeing no peace. The herders themselves are suffering because when we are not able to go to farm, where will they get the food to feed themselves? Because not only the animals need food, the herders themselves need food. So when there is a sharp drop in agricultural activities, as it is the case now, we are going to have a scenario where even the herders themselves will eventually not have food to eat. And therefore, it is only advisable that they key into this program of ranching to save themselves all the troubles that are there that they face
I guess
from
that's
day
a good place to
open grazing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We hope that at the end of the day, both parties are happy. Whatever the decision, let us just ensure that food security is achieved in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Senator Titus Tatenga Zam. He's a senator representing Benue Northwest Senatorial District. And thank you very much, Mr. Tunde Banjuko, a farmer and MDBO Farms. Thanks a lot for your time and your contribution on the morning brief. All right, so I guess that's where we end the show for today. Thank you very much for all who sent in questions, for all who sent in comments. Thanks a lot, and that's the show. I'm Anne Nwawadu.
And we can't say it enough that together we can do so much, but when we go alone, I doubt that we can go very far. So let's stay united. Join us again tomorrow for another beautiful edition of the program. I am Bukola Koga.
Even if you don't have access to a plot, you can plant in your little flower pot, at least for your mental health. Well, Sunrise Daily is next. Stay with us here on Channels Television. I'm Kaido Kikilu. Have a productive day.